just protecting this core support here before I start slinging resin. The plug that's going to get knocked out, I taped off the fiberglass part that we got to adhere to, so that way it doesn't mess up with the adhesion. Building wax in all the corners to clean up the radiuses, and then sprayed a part-all spray release agent. So there's a thin film release agent that'll be between what we're laying up today and those, so that way when it all dries I can just pull that all out from the inner wheel well. And yeah, you could say that in composites you'd call that the plug. Usually plug's kind of a mimic of what the part you want to make is. Putting a little bit of resin before we start putting the glass on this, you put a little on because you got to soak through each layer. If you get it on both sides, that way it makes it easier to soak through and get all the air bubbles out. So I pre-cut all my stuff. With composites, preparedness is because you're working against time and you're working against once you start, like my hands are already going to be getting nasty, so you're kind of, you want to have everything ready because you're not doing a lot of prep work once the resin starts going. What I'll do is I'll get one layer up or one piece up, and I'll brush some resin on. That way it can start soaking into the mat while I get another piece on, because you want to get, it's kind of hard to see with a white substrate, but you don't want a bunch of air bubbles or voids in the fabric or dry spots. So what I'm doing here is these are cleanly cut, so that way it does build up to kind of bridge the gap between the pre-existing material and the new material, because we're going to do an overlap. Every other layer is going to change. So the first layer is cut clean and it's kind of got squared edges. Second layer, you'll see it has shredded edges. That way you don't get hard lines in the layup. And it kind of cuts down on the buildup where you overlap, so it doesn't have like one strip of all the overlapping. Isn't a super thick area compared to the rest of the part. Just build up. None of the edges are touching, so there's no strength in that. And the multiple layers, there'll be overlap every other layer. And at first it may not all want to lay down how you want. That's why you kind of get it soaked. Start getting some of the resin into the fabric, and you keep moving to the next piece, and then just come back and mat that down, the previous piece. You can move to your next overlay without having it perfect, but you really don't want to get too far into your layers without making sure everything's laying flat. So right there, we've got everything covered once. And you'll see this piece here now has frayed edges. This stays hard because we don't need it to be frayed because it's going against the cutout area, and it's actually going to probably get trimmed back more once it's off the frame. So now that overlaps onto the glass there, onto the pre-existing body panel. Like, see, these don't want to stay over right yet. So what I'll do is get a little brushed on. That way it starts to soak. So when that overlaps that corner, that's gonna lock that piece over to the pieces we just did on top that didn't hang past. It's got 4 layers on everything now. Since I have resin left, I'm gonna come back, not to get up on the painted part, but to get right on the edge of the ground back part. I'll put another layer on the seam, and then once all this is dried and we put this on a rotisserie, we'll flip this over and I'll do a layer or 2 underneath, and I'll use a fiberglass filler to fill that gap there, and that should lock everything in nice and solid. So I'm tearing the edges because it's easier to lay them in. They're more pliable when you don't have square edges. Get a little harder. It'll kick quick, and then it'll start getting real warm. This is a 1.5 ounce mat, and then it's air conditioned in our shop, so it's about 72 degrees, so I keep it at about a just shy 1.5% mix ratio. But it gives you plenty of time to work it without having to apply any heat or anything. Is it. Now we'll let it cure up, and then it'll cure up like this, and then like I said, we'll pull all this backer out when it's all done and have us inner wheel wells. Cover like AC, like there's an AC dryer right here. It's bolted to the firewall right now. It covers that. It'll hide a bunch of plumbing and wiring and stuff.